in their lives. And so, anyway, God reveals himself in conscience. Now, let me just give you an illustration of what I'm talking about here, and I hope I can just go through this quickly. I am the 12th child of 16 children. My dad had 15 boys and 1 girl. One son was born in 1906, another was born in 1908 and 1912, and then his first wife died, and he married my mother. He was 36, and she was not quite 16 when they got married. In 1919, in September of 1919, in October of 1920, they had a son. And in October, 2 years later, they had another son. April of the next 25, they had another son. And in July of 1927, they had another son. In October of the next year, 29, they had a daughter. In July of the next year, in 1930, they had a son. The Depression came, so they backed off for 4 years. And in 1934, in October, another son was born. March of 1936, another son was born. April of 1938, I was born. January, another boy was born. In 1940, 41, and 43, and 45, a total of 16 children. Now, my dad was a sharecropper, and that meant that we were the poorest people in the whole area. All right, we didn't have anything, and we didn't go to church. My dad, as far as I know, never went to church much. He was reared in an orphanage and ran away from it when he was 15 years old, and so we just didn't know much about his background, and so we just didn't go to church. Just everybody. And so when I was 5 years old, my mother asked me one day, she said, "What are you going to be when you get to be a big boy?" And I said, "I'm going to be a preacher." I'd never seen one. Now, I don't know how you figure that one out, but that's all right. That's your problem. It's not mine. But anyway, when as a little boy, my mother would read the Bible to us. And she would read it in the night and then she was reading in the Psalms where it says, "And the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all that hate God." So I took a cover and put it over my head and say, "Don't read that, Mom. I don't want to hear that." Because you know what? What was God doing? Through his word, he was revealing himself to me in my conscience. And then I said, well, I don't know, I would like to go to heaven. So when I started the school, I tried to be as good as I could because I was wanting to go to heaven. And if I thought goodness would get you to heaven, maybe I'd make it on goodness. And so I tried to behave at school and mind the teacher and, just behave at school and not get in trouble. So, but anyway, when I was 9 years old, I was playing with an old battery radio, and I picked up a radio station in Del Rio, Texas, which was beaming the gospel out of Mexico in Ciudad Acuña, Coahuila, Mexico. And so at 8 o'clock, there was a man came on the radio, and he said, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek." Howdy, neighbor, this is J. Harold Smith, and I'm pastor of the First Baptist Church in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And good neighbor, you'll never know this side of glory, what a joy it is for me to come into your home by the means of radio. They played some songs, and then he preached. And for the first time in my life, I heard the gospel. I didn't know what to do, but I heard the gospel. Now, all along during that time, I was wanting to know more. I was wanting to know how to get to heaven. And see, if you want to know how to get to heaven, God is obligated to show you how. John 7:17 says this. Jesus said, "If any man wills to do his will, he shall know of the doctrine." That is, if you want to know the truth, God is obligated to give you the truth. Remember that. And then so what happens? Here comes along the road one Saturday afternoon, a lady walked up our house, and she had a big Bible in her hands, and she walked up to our house and invited, asked could she come in, and she sat on the front porch, and she told my mother that they go by our way going to church every Sunday morning and every Sunday night and Wednesday night, and wondering if we could go to church. Now, there were 7 boys at home at that time. And so we were real excited about it because it was in August of the year, and we hadn't gone anywhere since school's out. And we'd pulled off our shoes about March or April and didn't put it back on until first frost, you know. And so we we had to get up early Sunday morning and wash our feet real good because that dirt kind of sticks on you right below your ankle bone there. And so we washed our feet real good, and we stand out beside the road. My brother David, my brother Raymond, myself, my brother Joe, Charles, Eddie, and Johnny. And here comes this old 41 Ford pickup truck up there with no brakes on it. He finally got the thing stopped, and we got in the back, and we rode in the back of that truck to church. He went up the hill, and he went around the front of the church, and he went all the way around the back between the church and the graveyard, and he pulled it right up on the side of the hill, turned the key off right quick, threw it in gear, and it just choked right on down and stopped right there on the hill. And well, what he had, well, the problem was he had what we referred back to in those days, a hillside battery. That means that it just wouldn't start unless you push it. You guys never pushed cars. You never had to do that. But anyway, we thought that maybe they had taken us 7 boys there to push the truck after church. But that wasn't the story. She really wanted us to hear the gospel. And, of course, and we started in August, and the next February, when I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, also my entire family accepted Christ as a result of it. And so it's just one little visit from a dear little introverted woman to come to our house to invite us to go to church. And she was answering God's call because this little boy's conscience was bothering him about heaven and hell. And I thank the Lord for Ms. Wallace every day coming by and taking me to church. And I'm here, standing here, preaching to you today because of the influence of a little lady who had 13 children. And she cared about somebody else's little children. And she brought me to church. And she had 4 preacher boys in her family. They were preachers, and some of them are still living, preaching the gospel today. So God reveals himself in conscience. And then the truth of God's eternal power and divine nature has been clearly seen and has been understood or revealed through creation. Now, he goes on to say in this verse, he says, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it to him. Now, if you wanted to split a verse, there'd be a good time to split it right there. For God hath showed it unto them, because the invisible things of him from the creation of the world is what, class? It's clearly seen. Some years ago, I was on a board of directors of a mission board that had missionaries exclusively to the country of Mexico. And so every year for 17 years, I would go to Mexico and preach in some of their Bible Institute, and then also work with new missionaries that were going to the field. And so one of the new missionaries that had just been on the field a while, I went to see him, and he told me a story. And it's just a very, very revealing story. And there was a young lady who was about 13 years old in the village of Santa Isabel, about 250 miles from any civilization. They lived in thatched roofs. About 300 people in that city. And one night she was walking out as a teenager, and she looked up in the sky, and she saw the stars and everything. And she testified later on, she said, who are you? Creator? Whatever you are. If you'll reveal yourself to me, I'll worship you. And so time went on, and she got married. And she had a little boy, and he was out playing one day when a plane started circling the village. And this procedure that was, I guess, begun by Nate Saint, that you could fly the plane around and around, and you could hook a bucket onto a rope, and you could let the bucket down, and they would put a Bible in it, and people could just reach and get the Bible out, and they'd raise the bucket back up, and they'd go on to another village. And so this particular day, that's what happened. This plane let down that bucket. It kind of works like this, you know, it round and round like that. And this little boy went out and picked that Bible up. And it was wrapped in a gift, and it says to the mayor, I think the word is presidencia or something like that. Anyway, take it It's to the